Well, yeah, hello and welcome to the IDM and welcome to our event about our recently published book, My Danube Story. My name is Sophia Weidler and I'm Research Associate at the IDM and I will be moderating this event tonight. And we have a very diverse program with a very small book presentation, a discussion about literature and culture in the Danube region, and also some readings of stories out of the My Danube Story book. And the program today is actually especially fitting because today is also the World Book Day 2024. So it's actually the perfect occasion to have a book presentation and readings. And let me first introduce our speakers. So we are very glad to welcome Martinek here tonight. He's the director of the Collegium Hungaricum, one of the main Hungarian cultural institutes in Austria. And he has a lot of experience working in the field of cultural management and cultural transmission. And he has worked on a lot of cultural cooperation projects along the Danube, about which we will also hear today. And our second speaker is Sebastian Schäffer, director of the IDM. And he's also the editor of the My Danube Story book. And from him, we will hear a bit more about the IDM itself and also especially the 70 years program that we implemented last year. So please an applause for our speaker. Yeah, and in between the discussions, we will have the readings of 8 of the stories of the My Danube Story book, which I'm very much looking forward to. We have 7 authors in the room here tonight, and also 1 author joining online. Yeah. First of all, I want to very briefly present the book for anyone who doesn't know it yet, or explain a bit how it came about. So last year, on the occasion of the 70th anniversary of the IDM, we wanted to look back on the eventful history of the Danube region, the river and its people. And we wanted to hear personal stories, personal experiences on how the Danube and how the fluctuations of history in the Danube region affected individuals, but also maybe whole families. So we wanted to hear some personal Danube stories. And that's why we created a challenge on the website of the Story One publishing house. So anyone interested could send in their personal Danube story. And we collected the stories that were sent in. And in the end, we chose 16 of these stories and published them in this little book, also always accompanied with a picture. And yeah, I think we managed to find a beautiful collection of 16 stories. But I also don't want to get into it now in too much detail because we will hear 8 of these 16 stories in the next 90 minutes. So without further ado, let's start with our first speaker, Martinek. Thank you again for joining us here today. You're very active in different cultural formats, and one format is the Danube Lounge in the framework of the Buch Wien, so the yearly book fair in Vienna. Maybe you could tell us a bit about what is the Danube Lounge and what is its history.
First of all, thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. And I think books are the best decision or company on this wonderful winter evening. I think that's the best alternative to speak about books. So the Donau Lounge is the official title because it's actually in German. It was designed for the Buch Wien International Book Fair here in Vienna. And it's a long history already because it started 2012. That was the first edition. So it was right after the beginning of the European Union's Danube region strategy. So you need to imagine that was a totally different time in the context of this strategy. It was the very beginning. There was a lot of energy and spirit, which is there still today. But of course, we know this strategy already. And that time it was about the question how to bring it alive. So the Donau Lounge was actually one of the attempts to offer something out of the cultural scene which shows the cultural richness in a very concrete way. And the book fair was a very good crossing way for this, because you have the public there, you have all the authors there, you have media there, so it seemed to be a good mixture of all this. And well, the history just developed, and last year we had already the 11th edition, so it will be the 12th this year, which is really, well, for me, it's a success story. But it's really also a success story in terms of bringing literature to Vienna from all the Danube countries, because it started as a very small stage, somewhere in the last corner of the book fair. And today it's one of the central stages, which is maybe the most colorful in terms of international literature scene. So in the past few years, we had authors there from 13, 14, 15 countries. So it is really the entire region. We can also talk a little bit about the aims and the main program lines, because it's not just offering whatever literature from all over the Danube region. I don't know, maybe we can do it later or whatever.
You can gladly go now, yes.
So go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. Because what was the most important point? I mean, first we thought, okay, we need the kind of concept, and one concept line is, let's say, or criteria, that we wanted to have a mixture of well-known or famous representatives of literature, like it's always fantastic to have Mircea Cartarescu or Dragoe Jančar there as a reader. On the other hand, it was always extremely important to have the young talents there. So let's say the older ones, the established ones, can bring in the younger ones, or make them more popular, more famous, and this seems to work quite well. The second very important point was to have relevant topics, relevant themes from this region, which is on the one hand really to talk about history, because we are convinced that this is one of the main points where we have a lot of similarities. We have something common, what we share, which is the history of this region, but the perspectives are very different, and we need to understand it. So just to give one example, I mean, everyone would agree that all the treaties after World War I will be seen in a different way by Romanians, Serbians, or Hungarians, or Austrians. So this is what we want. This is what we have to or need to talk about, and literature can help at this point. A third one was to talk about minorities, because the Danube region is actually the most diverse region, as you will know, in the world, with most languages and cultures and ethnicities and minorities. Actually, it is a majority of minorities in this region, and this is also quite important to talk about. So it is not just, let's say, 8 or 10 national languages. It's much more. It's maybe 100. Or even more if we count all the dialogues. It will be even more complex, but that's nice. That has to be explained again and again. And of course, it was quite clear that Vienna is a very good stage for all that. Budapest could be also a good stage, but from Vienna, which was the former center or heart of this monarchy, is maybe still a good venue to discuss all these matters.
And do you have maybe some personal highlights or especially fascinating stories that were presented at the Donau Lounge?
A lot, of course, every year. So Yeah, definitely, definitely. Maybe there is one more thing, because it's not just about history and minorities. It is also about some um, some current topics. To give an example, we had quite a series of dialogues of the European capitals of cultures from the Danube region in the past few years, and it's still going on because at the moment we have a lot in the region, and these are of course very special cities with specific programs for renewal. They are discussion platforms themselves. They have a lot of artistic programs as well, of course. So also it's nice to talk about the literature programs of these capital cultures. So we had, for instance, Veszprém from Hungary and Timisoara from Romania last year. We have Badischl now in Austria. So we will have Nova Gorica next year. Then Trenčín from Slovakia in 26. But it was Novi Sad, a beautiful Danube city, an important Danube city, 2022. Earlier it was Plovdiv in Bulgaria, so I don't want to list them all. Just to point out that it's worth also to bring in the latest news, let's say, from culture. And that was, for instance, a framework, and I liked it very much. So this is definitely a highlight for me to talk with all the capitals of cultures on the donor large stage.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I have to admit, really, I always enjoyed very much, let's say, the big names. So I was already mentioned or Drago Jančar, or last year Franz Ober. So of course it's always a highlight for every one of us. Well, and it's really the topics, because this personal aspects and the local aspects of the same history, this shared history, is definitely something where literature is a remedy.
I was hoping that you would also mention the discussion with our chairman last year. No?
Yes, of course. Another highlight. Sure.
I wanted to mention that.
But it's not the only. It's not the only connection to EDM, because in earlier times we had quite a lot of cooperation. I think with last year we have a restart.
Yeah.
So it would be a pleasure if we could just continue.
Of course.
Every year one discussion. So
yeah.
Okay.
I already haven't.
We haven't seen you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And you already mentioned it a little bit, that literature can help with understanding these different perspectives on history in the Danube region. But so what would you say? Why do we need Danube stories?
Well, actually, exactly because they help us to understand. I have also some very concrete examples, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Well, I mean, because like having the war in Ukraine, I mean, it's one of the most important issues nowadays. But honestly, who does really know in a deeper sense the history of that region, the region of Ukraine, or this relation with Russia? And then suddenly you have fantastic authors like Andrei Furkov, just to give you one example, giving you literature stuff which is not just heavy history, but also a very ironic, sarcastic, let's say somehow, in a way, joyful literature, and still you learn a lot about history. So this book, Samson and Nadezhda, is about the years immediately after the revolution. in Kiev. It's playing in Kiev. And there is one storyline about someone who becomes part of the new police, the new communist police. But in the battle, first he loses his ear, and everywhere this ear is, he can hear everything. So even later after that, so this ear somehow keeps alive and tells him stories, etc. So it's, yeah, but it's just one storyline. Everything else is quite real. So it's really based on a lot of research, historical research, and it's a fantastic book. I mean, and you will know how this situation that time looked like in Kiev in a totally different time. So very much to to recommend, let's say. Okay, maybe just to have another one, which is another time of history or period of history. This is from Dr. Drago Jančar. I have a German version of these two books here. Anyway, it's playing during World War II in Maribor. That time Marbach an der Drau. And it's about the main question: if under very special crisis circumstances, love still can exist. But the history is again quite real and realistic. It's about Nazis there, it's about collaboration, it's about the partisan movement around. So you learn a lot about the history of that smaller region and the city, and suddenly you understand why people have some sensitivities. Is it the right word? I don't know. Are still sensitive today when hearing about certain relationships or historical periods. And it's the same. I mean, if you start with a novel from Hungary or wherever, you will understand, okay, these are the difficulties. That's why they cannot overcome some obstacles in their minds. And you don't have to like it, but you have to understand it, the position of the other one. Mm-hmm. That's the main point. And this is what we try all the time in this small framework.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, Andrei Kurkov is one of my favorite authors. After the description of these nice books, we can start with our own Danube stories, and we can start with the first round of readings, and with our first author, Eithne Bradley, and her story Venus of Willendorf, that takes us back behind the Iron Curtain.
Let me find the page. Venus of Willendorf. When I was a child, my mother would tell us stories about people like us, but not quite, who lived along the banks of the prehistoric Danube. They stood shorter than us, with their thick brows and barrel chests against the Ice Age cold. Did they speak like us, I wondered? Had my ancestors looked into their eyes and seen intelligence there, or a dullness like an animal's? Theirs was a world of intractable forest, split only by the great arterial rivers on which our ancestors, their rivals, sailed their canoes. I snuggled closer to my mother as I imagined the walls of ice that only ended in the Alps, the cold breath sweeping over the landscape where mammoths roamed. My mother longed to go to the dig sites along the river, but half lay behind the Iron Curtain, and half beyond an even more insurmountable wall, 3 children and a mortgage to pay. Still, the names were enough to paint that vanished world: Orignatian, Dolny Vestonice, Pestera, Willendorf. I would find her reading the latest archaeological journals with their colour palettes of painted caves and sharp-edged tools. Years later, my mother flew to meet me in Bratislava. She touched the window as the train started for Vienna, saying, "All this was there all along." She meant the murals of strapping workers, the fields and the factories alike, and those dig sites, now European Union funded and neatly fenced off. In the Natural History Museum, we huddled around the Venus of Willendorf. The little statue was spotlit, light shining on her creamy curves, head bowed, arms demurely held over her chest. She could have been a goddess or the most ordinary every woman. She's 40,000 years old, my mother whispered to me. There had been hands that had held that little statue, I thought. They judged the right angle to strike the mammoth ivory and how much to polish the surface. They'd appraised it with eyes that saw art, just as I did, in the swell of the statue's knees, in her exaggerated proportions. Gazing at the statue, I found I was thinking about that vanished world again. The same pair of hands that had carved the Venus had also touched the rough bark of trees long dead, had scooped up the water from a Danube both like and unlike the one that I crossed on my commute every day. Their eyes had seen blue skies devoid of jet trails, and nights so abundantly starry they could hunt by that light alone. And perhaps they had seen our cousins, the other people, now only a ghost in our DNA. My mother and I murmured to one another in low voices, marveling at the complexity of the headdress, the smoothness of the legs, how she'd survived for so long, marveling at the fact that after so many years my mother was here, and that we would shortly take a train over the ghost of the Iron Curtain to those sites. And behind us, a couple on a day trip from Brno were impatient.
Thank you very much for this story that took us back in time. Our next story plays a bit more in our time, and it's a story about traveling along the Danube. It's called A Journey Through Time and Space by Kamila Bogdanova.
Good evening, dear listeners. It's a big pleasure and honor for me to present my personal story from one of the most unforgettable trips in my life, a journey through time and space. As a child, I was always enchanted by stories of far-off lands and adventures. The idea of Grand River flowing through multiple countries and cultures was a concept that held a special place in my heart. Little did I know that the Danube River would become the backdrop for one of the most unforgettable experiences of my life. It was a crisp autumn morning when I found myself standing at the river bank in Budapest. The sun cast a warm, golden glow over the city's iconic parliament building as it reflected on the gentle ripples of the Danube. I was in awe of the grandeur of this majestic waterway, which had witnessed centuries of history. My journey along the Danube began with a leisurely boat ride. The Danube flowed calmly, and as we glided along its surface, I marveled at the architectural splendor of Budapest, with its ornate bridges connecting Buda and Pest. The river served as a silent witness to the struggles and triumphs of Hungary's history, and its banks were lined with stories waiting to be told. As we sailed upstream, the landscape gradually changed. The picturesque Hungarian countryside unfolded before me, with quiet villages, rolling hills, and vineyards dotting the landscape. It felt like a living postcard, and I couldn't help but be reminded of the countless travelers who had taken this very route before me. My journey continued through Slovakia, Austria, and Germany. Each country had its unique charm, and the riverbanks transformed with changing cultures and landscapes. In Vienna, I was serenaded by the music of Strauss and Mozart, whose melodies seemed to dance on the water. One of the most memorable stops on my Danube adventure was in the charming town of Dürnstein, Austria. Nestled amidst terraced vineyards, this little gem had a timeless quality that took me back in time. I sampled local wines and strolled along cobblestone streets, feeling as though I stepped into a fairy tale. As I ventured deeper into the heart of Europe, I found myself in the historic city of Regensburg, Germany. Its medieval architecture and winding streets were a testament to the ending spirit of the past. The Danube, with its steady flow, was the silent observer of the city's evolution. My journey eventually led me to the Danube's confluence with the mighty Rhine River, and I bid farewell to this enchanting waterway. The memories of my Danube adventure remained etched in my heart, a testament to the beauty and diversity of Europe as seen through the eyes of a river. The Danube River is not just a waterway, it's a guide, it's a storyteller, it's a companion on my journey through time and space. It showed me the rich tapestry of cultures and histories that wove together along its banks, leaving an indelible mark on my soul. It was a journey that would carry with me for a lifetime, a reminder that the world's greatest stories are often written by the rivers that flow through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamila, for taking us on this trip on a boat on the Danube. Our next story takes us a little bit further away from the Danube, but also shows how far the influence of the Danube or its heritage reaches. And that's the story by Peter Techet, Flow of Ambiguities.
The flow of ambiguities. In the coffee house, you can find Vienna's melange, Hungarian goulash soup, Slovenian breads, and people enjoy their spritz, just like in Central Europe, wine with soda, called gemischt, a German word written in Croatian. The spoken languages are Italian, occasionally Slovenian, and the older ladies and gentlemen appreciate it when someone speaks German. They may not speak much German themselves, but they feel Austrian. From Via San Francesco, it is not far for the water. It's not the Danube, but the Adriatic Sea. However, in Trieste, the Danube still flows in many hearts. Claudio Magris, a Germanist from this city, wrote possibly the most beautiful travel guide about the Danube. Often sitting here is Marko, or as he calls himself, Markus. He explains his city in the best Viennese dialect. He, the descendant of a Venetian noble family, wants to represent the Slovenian minority. And he still refers to Vienna as the capital. In Trieste, there are more identity constellations and identity collisions than the city has residents. Slovenian Catholics who love Italy, Italian communists who long for Yugoslavia, Habsburg nostalgics who vote for Italian nationalists in elections. This is Central Europe, as the Austrian historian of Hungarian descent, Moritz Csáky, wrote, a laboratory for mixed identities, ambiguities, contradictions, and opposites. It is the space where either or clarity does not prevail, but as Robert Musil described Kakanian, there is a constant both and option, sometimes the less unfriendly neither nor. It is the part of Europe where the greatest Hungarian poet Sándor Petőfi was originally Slovak and Serbian, where the greatest Italian irredentist, Guglielmo Oberdan, came from a German-speaking family, where a German-speaking Jewish author called himself a Swabian Italian, Italo Svevo, and where a Viennese anti-Semitic German nationalist professor, Taras Borodajkevich, had a Polish name. Logic need not to be found here. It's not longer the realm of clear categories. Everything is possible. Post-Habsburg Central Europe was postmodern before it was cool. Even the Danube is not a geographical category here. It does not flow where it is indicated on the map, but connects people, cities, and landscape that are not situated along the Danube. What separates them here is so common that it ultimately brings them together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter, for this inspiring story. Before we continue listening to more of the stories of our authors, we go back to our speakers because, yeah, we will hear a bit more about the IDM and our 70 years program from IDM Director Sebastian Schäffer, because we did not only publish a book on the occasion of our 70th anniversary, we also had a very ambitious event series that we implemented. So maybe you could introduce the IDM a little bit and especially also our 70 years activities.
Yeah, thank you, Sophia. Before I do that, gladly, I would like to say that, of course, this book is a fantastic collection of stories, and I'm very proud that I have my name as an editor on it. But this book would not be there without the hard work that you also put in there. Because you worked on not only making the story challenge a success, that we had actually enough stories to select from. You also put them together, and I think we have a very great selection. I think Sophia deserves a big the privilege of a director, and then like simply put his name somewhere there, and the actual work is done by someone else. Although the work of the 70 years was a real team effort, I'd say. What we did, but well, how does it normally function? You imagine on Mondays in this room, there is a shoe fix happening with the whole team, and then a director comes in, and if he had too much time on the weekends, then he comes up with another crazy idea, and then the team needs to implement it. And one of these Mondays was somewhere back in 2022, and I said, okay, next year we have our 70th anniversary. We're going to celebrate that on the day when that institute was actually founded. So on the 5th of December. And starting from January, we are going to look for a possibility to be in each of our 19 countries. And the team said, yeah, sure, because I mean, they're very well behaved. They would not contradict me, but I'm not sure what they actually thought. And starting from there, we try to find possibilities to sort of work together with partners and find opportunities to actually go into those countries. Yeah? The very first one, and here's another connection, was at the Danube Cultural Conference in Novi Sad.
Oh, yes.
Yeah? So this was our, so to say, local initiative in Serbia. And we had the possibility to cooperate again also with you. And this was more or less the kickoff. And then it took us to all of the countries in the Danube region, the broader Danube region as we define it as IDM, and with the exception of Belarus for obvious reasons, but we still also managed to do something there virtually. We were going to countries to do the classical discussion about a topic that is current at the moment, but we also had other events. We were, for instance, our Bulgarian event was done with Sophia and also with Malvina. She, in 2022, also curated a photo exhibition together with the VHS Landstraße and the ÖAD Cooperation Office in Lviv and the Photoschule in Wien, where they brought this to the Bulgarian capital. We also had an event that was dedicated to the river with this exhibition, which was brought to the Elias Canetti house in Russe. And then there's, I mean, some shameless self-promotion. I, for instance, went to Kiev and had a discussion there. And about this trip, I also wrote a book that came out in March, where we had a discussion on the future of Ukraine and the security challenges within European integration. So we've tried to do a very broad spectrum of discussions, and what we also try to do is that the team members go to the different countries and cooperate with the different partners. And ultimately, we succeeded. We didn't manage to do it before the 5th of December. So the 70-year big celebration that happened in Vienna. Our series was not complete yet, but we managed to complete the series. I think Peter was in Kosovo on the 19th of December or something. So that was the last day. We succeeded. It was a tremendous effort, because you have to understand, I mean, we have a very small team, and we did coincidentally also 70 events in total last year. So additionally to them, to these 19 events, we also had further events that we implemented. And what was amazing here was to see that this great potential of cooperating with that diversity, with the various partners that we had. And I think it's a very unique achievement that we've done, because I think there's a lot of institutions like us in the region. There's much bigger institutions like us, but I don't think that you will find an institution that was present in 19 different countries in just 1 year. And I think the overall spirit of IDM here is that we make these kind of things happen, and that no matter how crazy the idea is, if we work together and utilize this diversity, fantastic things come out. This book is one of them. And to be honest, when I now heard the first 3 stories, I had goosebumps. I wouldn't imagine that it is like this. But it was so fantastic to listen already to these stories. I can't wait for the next story. So I probably stop talking.
Yeah, but I have a few more questions. So you already mentioned the exhibition, which is of course a project more in the cultural field.
Yeah.
Or what else work does the IDM do in the field of culture and arts? And is it important? And if you think yes, why is it important that think tanks also are involved in more cultural and projects that are related to art?
Yeah, I think it's not easy, but it's absolutely necessary, and you get a whole different perspective on certain things. I think we gain so much if we look outside of this metaphorical ivory tower, which is something that is always ascribed to think tanks. We sit in our ivory tower, we think, and then we propose something, and well, it's a discussion amongst ourselves. But no, we go out, we go in the region. This is our I think our mission, but also our passion, that we actually work with the people in the region. We're not only talking about them. So of course, we have the one of our core activities for almost 30 years now. I think the 29th edition is currently being prepared. Again, Martin also has worked on that for years. It's the cultural guide on Central Europe, Kulturführer Mitteleuropa. Nowadays, again, it shifted a bit from the very beginning. It's now integrated in our Info Europa series. Of course, it's not getting easier if you have a printed publication that needs to be produced. But anyway, I mean, it's still there. It's alive and kicking, I would say, and it's great to see that we are still able to actually have also something haptic in our hands. That is there, and so this is another activity. And then you see a very practical example. If you look around in the room, I don't know if some of the pictures are visible and also online, is the result of one of our projects. The Danube Small Project Fund was putting together this project, which is called Act Together, Act Now, and we just couple of weeks ago had the vernissage of that project. And these pictures by Ragshlupan will be here for another couple of months. So it's worth coming and looking at those pictures. But if you can't come to Hahngasse, it's also online on our website. And I think here also the major point is that we have something here. And today we talk about these books, but you can also see these pictures. On Friday, we will have a cooperation event with the Foreign Ministry and the US Embassy, bringing Bosnians to Vienna, discussing current challenges in politics. But they will do it in this room, and around them will be these pictures. So there's these elements coming to it where we try to create these synergies. And again, I think this is one of our major strengths here at IEM, is that we utilize our network and we find these synergies, because of course we were not able to implement all these 19 events last year, or 20 if you count even an event dedicated to the Danube, without the support of the others. We had the possibility to utilize this, and this is the importance here, to combine it, but maybe not all the time directly, but a little bit more subtle maybe.
Yeah, thank you. And the last question before we go to more readings would be the same that I already asked Martin Mihesh.
Yeah.
Why do you think we need Danube stories?
I think when we talk about the river Danube, I always more or less quote our former chairman, who unfortunately passed away in 2022, Erhard Busek, who called it the second river of European integration. And when we look to European integration, there's always this, we need a narrative for why are we doing this. And the major narrative probably is this peace, stability, prosperity, democracy. But it's not true for each and everyone. Not only that are not part of the EU yet, but also countries that are members that have experienced this not for 70 years. Slovenia, Croatia, etc. Future EU members like Ukraine are suffering at the moment and experiencing this at the moment. I just came back from Lviv on Friday, and it's haunting still to see that. So why I'm saying this is when we looked at this, and we had in 2020, on the 25th anniversary of the EU membership of Austria, we tried to find what a more overarching narrative could be there. So we were asking, what's the matter, Europe, we called it. And of course, it was pandemic time, so it was online. So we collected stories, and we realized we don't need to find one narrative, one story, because the overall thing is united in diversity. And so we need to listen to the stories that are already there. We need to not try to find what is more or less common, but we should embrace the beauty of these different stories that are out there. And this is why I think we need much more than stories. And no, it's enough. Let's listen to more.
Yeah. Yeah, the book for sure also shows diversity. The stories are all very diverse. And we start with our second round of readings. And the first story will be Bridge Between Two Worlds by Daniel Martinek, who is also a research associate at the IDM, and who also touches a bit upon his work in his story.
So good evening also from my side, and great that you took the time to be here with us, and it's a pleasure to be here today. And of course, many thanks to Sebastian for this wonderful initiative, and of course, many thanks also to Sofia, who put so much effort, so many efforts actually to finalize the book and to bring the stories together and create the book. As it was already mentioned, I would never imagine that the Danube River will actually have such a profound influence on my professional career. But yeah, this is how it is, and I tried actually to describe this in my story. To be honest with you, it was quite easy actually to write the contribution because it describes my personal experience, so my fingers were kind of led by heart, so to say. But what was the challenging part was actually when I had this wonderful idea to actually try to be a poet. And as you will see, my contribution in the book actually ends with a brief poem, and yeah, how successful I was in this new role for the first time in my life. This is something I will leave to you about. So yeah, bridge between the two worlds. No steep slopes below Visegrad Castle, no blue tower of the picturesque town of Dürnstein, no reflections of the majestic Esztergom Cathedral. Just a typical road and rail bridge with a historical identity matching hundreds of other bridges in Europe, yet different and exceptional, at least for me. This ordinary bridge represents a symbol of my recent remarkable experience, the story of my last years, the bond between my seemingly distant worlds. Two massive green metal snakes crawling side by side allow me to cross the river so many times. The Danube Bridge in Thorne in Lower Austria. Having lived in Vienna for more than 5 years, I realized only in the last few months that I could not even count how many times I crossed the mighty Danube River thanks to this bridge, either while commuting between my residence in Vienna and visiting my family and friends in Czechia, or during the countless trips I took with my girlfriend. But this is not a story about our car trips or train travels. With each crossing, a new chapter of my story in Austria's capital was written, another stage of my personal and professional transformation recorded in the book of my life. But behind all this, there is still something more, a clash of two worlds existing in parallel on both shores. The rigidity of a small village clashing with the dynamics of a city, the liberalism of urban environment with the conservatism of rural area, the cosmopolitanism of international colleagues confronted with the provincialism of some Czech friends. Two worlds so seemingly far apart, yet mingling within me. Coming from a village near the brewing city of Pilsen in Western Bohemia, I would never have imagined that the Danube River and its surrounding region would affect me in such a profound way as it has over the past years. My involvement at the Institute for the Danube Region and Central Europe, the Danube Rectors Conference, and finally the EU strategy for the Danube region hints to the fact that the river flowed through my daily work and formed the rapids of my life. But the Thun Bridge was still standing there as a personal reminder, as a professional recapitulation, as an arbitrary reality check. It always performed its role as befits the bridge. It connected my two worlds, the perfectly explored microcosm of my childhood and the adult world of the known unknown. Such an intersection of two worlds has its great transformative power. It is like routinely crossing a bridge while not realizing the river below moves you forward, shapes you, defines your personality, determines your mental map. And just as the river finds its way through a rugged landscape and changes its course over time, so too does man shift with the challenges of life. Suddenly, a new bridge needs to be built, a bridge bringing another stream of experiences, a bridge guaranteeing the continuity of life's path, a bridge connecting different realities, a bridge between two worlds. And now, finally, the poem. Oh, Danube, my muse, by your waters I have grown, in the heart of Europe where cultures unite. A journey profound as life has shown, in your embrace I have found my delight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this insight into the two worlds and for the small poem. We will continue with the poem by Olena Babii. She joins us online. And she was actually also present at our anniversary in December in Vienna. And now she joins from Ukraine, which I'm especially happy about. And her poem is called My Danube Poem.
Yeah, hey everyone. I hope you hear me okay. I'm so honored to be among all the authors and to be included in this book and to participate in the reading and this event in general. So I thank you very much for having me. My story is rather short than others because it's a poem. And the foreword that I wrote in the book is not that necessary. I just tried to explain why I wrote the poem because I probably feel the most confident in rhymed phrases and sentences. So here we go, my Danube poem. In ancient Greece, there was a man, historian might say. He wrote histories, a deal so huge, still counts these days. The Danube was in Istras there, it matured old and wise, as if it was embodiment of greatest river gods. In times of Roman emperors, the Danube was frontier, it held the mightiness of those and helped to live, per se. Through centuries of fast and grief, the river witnessed all, the nation's rise, the bloom of life and terror of the war. So long and wide, serene flows, the Danube still remains. The emerald waters run so deep you cannot look away. It helped to build, it helped to grow, to keep in peace, to be. Wherever you might need to go, the river takes you here. Connecting countries, cities, lives, the Danube's made his deal. Across the ages, old and wise, it counts greatly still. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this beautiful poem. And in general, I'm very glad that we also have a poem in the book to include also different genres. That's very nice. So thank you very much for your contribution. And before we continue with our last round of reading, maybe one more question to our speaker, Martin Mehes. As you are very active with different cultural projects along the Danube, maybe you could tell us a little bit about especially interesting projects you have been involved in recent years, yeah, that were maybe especially outstanding or that you can remember very well.
Yes. I mean, first of all, maybe just two more remarks to your projects, to the donor launch as well. I mean, it fits to all or applies to all, which is partnership. That's one of the key words or phenomena. I mean, I was talking here a lot about how we deal with literature, but actually this project, also the donor launch, wouldn't mean anything without partnership. It was an initiative by Collegium from Vienna back in 2012, but there are a lot of partners behind. So I wouldn't list them right now, but it's really a long list, and EDM is one of the partners. So it's really a fruitful initiative in that way. And just a second thing, because in related to especially the literature and how to distribute literature in this region, which is so diverse, we need to, let's say, just one word, to speak one word about translation and translators, because this is really the clue to everything. I mean, this book wouldn't exist without translation. All these books wouldn't exist without translators and translations. It's extremely important. And I mean, Vienna and all the German-speaking countries here are in a very lucky situation because the German-speaking world is quite big and wide, and there are a lot of translations. But especially in the Danube region, it's not so much the question if we have enough material for the donor launch, for example, because there is a lot every year. But if there is enough translation between Serbian and Hungarian or Bulgarian and whatever, Slovakian. So that's the main question, and that's why it's so good that we have Tradutki as an international organization or network for translation, but also some national programs are very good. I'm happy that also in Hungary there is a fund for translating literature from Hungarian in any languages, where you get support for the translation itself. So it's for publishing houses. But anyway, let's come very shortly to some more Danube-wide culture projects, which are all about cooperation. And two of them you have mentioned already, Sebastian, because here you can see how connected we are. You mentioned the Danube Small Project Fund, which was really also one of my most beloved children, let's say, in the series of Danube cooperations. The Danube Small Project Fund is small-scale funding for supports up to 5,000 euros. And it's the third call running right now, so it's still alive, and I hope there will be also a future for that. And it's also a cooperation project, so it's a fund constituted by different institutions from 4 or 5 countries. So that's a good way to do things like that. You also mentioned the Danube Conferences on Culture, which is even a longer history. It started in 2013 in Ulm, in Germany, and is organized or has been organized once per year. And it's really the only, let's say, platform for networking for cultural institutions, for artists, for cultural managers from all over the Danube region. And the huge added value is that every year you will be informed about fundings, but also about the latest projects that are going on. So really successful projects where you either can step in or learn from quite a lot. Yes, but I had the pleasure to have a lot of experience or cooperation in the with Danube projects in the past few years. So there was also an initiative I liked very much, or is still going on. The title is Mysterious or Rätselhaft in German, which is an initiative for the European Capitals of Culture in the Danube region. And it's about hidden places. It's about a little bit maybe also lost places or forgotten places. So we took artists from 4 European capitals of culture, just visiting other European capitals where they work on sites, on forgotten sites, on hidden places, and interpret these places, which is also very much about history, about the history of these places, venues, etc. And well, it's coming to an end this year because the last capital of culture where there will be a project week is Bad Ischl, that is the Salzkammergut. I think it will happen in Edensee, whatever. And then there will be the last final big presentation of this project at the International Danube Festival in summer this year. There are also some more, but maybe I just stop here because I don't want to lose too much time. But I think, I mean, maybe remains the #1, and there I'm still in, of course.
Yeah, thank you for that, and also thank you for mentioning the aspect of the translations, which I found very interesting. Yeah, so these were my last questions to our speakers, but maybe there are some questions from the audience to one of our speakers, or online also, or from our YouTube live stream. Okay, then if not, we can continue with our readings, and we will start a new reading round with Rebecca Thorne, and her story is about the cold waters of the Danube and about a new beginning. Cold waters.
Tomorrow's teenager, still small and high-pitched, scoots past me as I walk along the river embankment. He has known this place for as long as he can remember, has grazed his knee on the gravel, a brief calamity now long forgotten, and catapulted himself into the fluid wetness. It is the map of his short life, and surely the forever of his future. He can't imagine anything or anywhere else as tangible as the Danube. I walk on, with his shoulders hunched in an undersized suit jacket. Yesterday's youth cuts across my path and frowningly searches for answers in the upside-down reflection of the island. So recently, he had spent careless summer days throwing frisbees on the narrow strip of land between the Danube and its lanky arm. But those days are over. Now he must pretend to be an adult. Not far from me, a lady of a certain age, who can't quite believe she belongs to today, with its wrinkles and graying beauty, sits with legs stretched out on a bench and face turned towards the watery, rippling shimmer. She likes it here because the weak, late autumn sun shines not only from above, but also from below, and there is still a suggestion of warmth. And I? Where do I belong in this relentlessly rushing timeline? The rivers of my youth are not the Danube. They flow through countries that are separated from this one by sea and mountains, places that are apart and choose to distance themselves yet further. I have known tributaries of this mighty waterway, but the Danube is new to me. Walking past these generations of people so familiar with their river, I am inundated with emotions that I struggle to name. Longing, perhaps, or loneliness. An irrational part of me is jealous that these people can call the Danube their home, that they have the certainty of past and present and future entrenched in this region, to my imagining at least. I want to see my story reflected in the inky waters, liquid words that pour into eternity. I want to be part of the history that courses through Vienna. I go down to the river, onto the jetty. The wind whips my hair into my face and a few rust-colored leaves stream past me. Ignoring the chill and the curious looks, I get changed. 1 foot. It is cold, but it doesn't hurt yet. And anyway, today I will be brave. 2 feet. Ankles, calves, thighs. Now it becomes more challenging. The water reaches my stomach, and each centimeter requires an effort of will. It would be easier to go all at once, I think, and count myself in. 3, 2, 1. There is a split second where I feel nothing, and then comes the shock of the cold. I experience a flood of feeling, or is it pain? My breath, when I resurface, is short and sharp and requires concentration. A reminder of what it is to be alive and here and now. I swim. Small, uncertain strokes at first, testing these new waters, and then more confidently, drawing great arcs with my arms and stretching my legs into the unknown. And my story joins the torrent of others in and on and by the river Danube.
Thank you for this very vivid story. Our next story is about the life of different generations along the Danube. It is called The River by Mirko Savković.
Now, I don't know if the authors are the best people to read it. Maybe it would be, better to have some stage performers or someone, who can do it more professionally. But just a second, I need to find my story. So, the river. The river in front of me was the only outstanding feature of the environment that was grabbing attention. The surrounding Pannonian fields, vineyards, and villages lined up their unexceptional humble patterns in interchangeable and tedious sequences. After a long time, I felt an unusual sensation of the absence of anxiety. My eyes, my river, my comfort, my peace. My brain resembled that weird bug able to float on the surface of water. Water was everywhere. I remember my grandpa telling me how a boat cannot be sunken by the water surrounding it, only water inside of it. Or was it maybe Tom Hanks in that movie? I will never know for certain. It was late, I was tired. A small TV was on in the living room. Be as it may, I wish it was my grandpa who coined it. This river in front of me is an unacknowledged destiny of all of us. It is a highway of human migration. The liquid tower of Babel, the holy goddess of fertility and heartless monster. Ghosts in the ruins of the hotel named after the river silently sing sagas about glorious and shameful pasts. Waves on the surface present unusual yet familiar broken images, a window into the past or the future, incomplete fractions of the miraculous natural museum. One day they will build a bridge here over the river. One day nobody will care about this border. One day nobody will fight about this. This river will look the same as today, absolutely indifferent. Yet I know that the magical river creatures that live just below the surface will preserve the memory of everyone who perished. They will remember my grandfather, who daydreamed about poppy fields on the opposite bank of the river. Ages ago, long before I ever met him, he swam across the mighty river. He was a brave young man. Or maybe it was some story he prepared just for me. My crazy old clown playing violin, brave horse rider, and a grumpy mechanic. I know that mermaids, horrified and hardened by everything they saw, will keep my tiny precious memory. Enough to feel light in my weak body. Enough to enjoy in late autumn sun. Enough to drink coffee and hedonistically think about quince compote I haven't had since last year. Yes, they will build the bridge just for me, right here, one day. I just have to be more patient than my grandpa.
Thank you for this story. And with that, we come to our last story by Irena Ashcraft. And she asks the question, how can you know this river?
Thank you. It's really lovely to hear all of your stories and to be a part of this evening. Thank you for organizing it. Let's see if I can find my story. And I'm going just based on the pictures. Here it is. How can you know this river? How can you know the water, who she is and where she begins? Everything we map and measure, those are merely human things. And the river we think we know, the one we call the Danube, she dreams far different dreams. Your school books didn't tell you, but the poets know the secret and will share it only once. Here, hush, listen closely. Who doesn't listen now will miss it, or who doesn't have a poet's heart. The river we call Danube rises softly, night by night, drop by drop, into a realm of vapor and cloud, imperceptible to us. She sneaks away while we sleep. She travels by starlight along currents in the sky to drop by drop, in some other place, where the people there give her another name, Nile, Amazon, Mekong. Or she flows free to lands where another you and another I will call her softly by a different song. Arduna, Dunai, Dunas, Dunav, Dunarea, Dunai will weave her name into our lullabies. Our best symphonies will play her waltz. We'll call her by the name we gave her, but she will never turn around. We think we know her because we know her miles, her depths, her curves. We point to those wide and gushing currents and say, this side will be mine and that will be yours for as long and long as history replays itself. And for it, we will fight wars. And here's the line where your cities shall begin. And here's the line where the land shall be ours. We say we know her, the Danube, because we memorized the map, because we dug up ancient treasures, distant traces of other lives lived long ago from her muddy shores. And we'll pass the exam if we can say Who conquered this portion or that? Who sailed great ships along her waves? Which important battles were fought along her banks, and which important people died? But the river doesn't stop for that. The river never will. You can recite all the facts, say that she begins and ends in black, black forest to black sea. You can claim she surges past 10 countries in their current states. You can count the castles and fortresses, reminisce about fortunes and empires, create policies and compose histories of trade and peace and warfare. You can harness her for electric power, build cities on her banks, say she drives whole economies, but you still won't understand the depths that she contains. Maybe ask the long ago dreamers who knew her by more than name, whose very sweat and tears and stories were the river's own. Ask the Vincia what they felt as the morning sunlight touched her pale blue waves, or the Romans what adventure called beyond her every bend. Ask the banded demoiselle what her backwaters reveal, or the sandpiper what he feels as he glides along above her shores. Or leave the books behind and go, by moonlight, by bike, to her nearest sparkling shore. Leave the facts you mistook for feeling behind and begin to listen, and you will know. Slip into a quiet eddy and feel the water slowly rise to touch your thighs, your belly, your hair as it floats. Let the river hold you and whisper who she is. Become as free as she always has been. There is this and only this.
Thank you very much for this beautiful story that also mentioned the Danube and all the names of the Danube and all the different languages spoken along the Danube, which is one of my favorite passages of the story, and I think also a very good way of ending this event. I really enjoyed the discussion with our speakers and all the readings of our authors. I think we gained a lot of insights about the culture and literature in the Danube region and about the importance of Danube stories. And I want to thank, of course, everyone involved, especially our guest Martin and our director Sebastian Schäffer, and all of our authors, Eithne Bradley, Kamila Bogdanova, Peter Techet, Daniel Martinek, Olena Babii, Rebecca Thorne, Mirko Savković, and Irena Ashcraft. Please, a big applause for everyone. If you enjoyed the book and if you're curious to get to know the remaining 8 stories, it's of course possible to buy the book online. We have a few QR codes around the room and also on the table outside where you can scan the code and buy the book online on the Thalia website. We also have a hard copy of the book on the table if you want to have a look through the book again. Also some other publications of the IDM, and if you're in general interested in the work of the IDM, we of course appreciate if you sign up for our newsletter or follow us on social media. And now I want to invite you all for a glass of wine after the event. And thank you very much for coming, and have a nice rest of the evening. Thank you.